Hi, everyone, and welcome to a tutorial on how to make graphs in Google Sheets. First thing you're going to do is take yourself to Google. Then you're going to use the Google app icon, and you're going to look for Sheets in your list. You're going to click on it, and it's going to bring you to a generic screen. When you open a blank document, it's going to end up looking like this. Now it's ready to accept your data. What you want to do before you even start is you want to think about what problem question are you trying to ask or trying to answer. This is going to be, what is the effect of different amounts of fertilizer on the height of a tomato plant? What's my independent variable? It's going to be fertilizer. What's my dependent variable? It's going to be the height of the tomato plant. Now, I will already have decided upon my independent variable because of course that's what I'm selecting. So let's go ahead and get a title in, the independent variable, and a place for the dependent variable. It would look like this: a title that represents the independent and the dependent variable, the independent variable with units, the dependent variable with units, independent variable typed in, decided upon number of trials, as well as a column for averages. Now, my data table is ready to accept data. At this point, you could either take data that you've collected elsewhere or perform the experiment and type the data directly into your already created data table. Once the data is typed in, it's going to look like this. You can see that in here is all of my dependent data that I've collected from doing my actual experiment. What we're going to do is we're going to then go ahead and create a graph. The way that we do that is we highlight the data that we want, and we go to Insert and Insert Chart. I've actually done that right here. So when we do that, when I highlight the data and I insert the chart, I get one that looks like this. But right away, you should realize that it's kind of odd looking. All the lines are all clumped up on top of one another. You've got this weird legend here, a bad title. Essentially, the data doesn't even really look accurate. And this is because the way that you've highlighted it, Google isn't interpreting correctly, or Google Sheets is not interpreting correctly. So what you want to do is think about, what do you actually really want to show the viewer? What's the data that's going to help them to best analyze what's going on with your experiment? And that's actually going to be to click a little bit differently. What we want to do is we want to select all of your independent variables like this. What I did was push Shift and the down arrow. Then I'm going to let go. Then I'm going to select what dependent variables I really want. And what I really want are going to be the averages, because the averages take into account all of my other data. It's going to leave me with one line, and it's going to allow me to display that data in a way that's easy for the reader. So we're going to go ahead and select my averages. Then I'm going to go in here to Insert, and I'm going to go ahead and insert a chart. Notice, this is not the correct type of chart. Bar graphs are generally for simple relationships, and line graphs are for changes over time. Because the plant has to grow over time, we need to have a line graph. Once you get it in there, it's going to look like this. I actually specifically picked scatter plot because it allows me to talk for just 1 second about a mistake that students often make. And that's that they'll put in the dots, which is actually a scatter plot, and they won't actually connect the dots together, which would make it a line graph. So just be a little bit careful. If you're graphing by hand and you put the dots in, don't forget to connect the dots so that you're turning your line graph or your scatter plot, excuse me, into a line graph. When you do that, when you actually go back up and select line graph, you're going to get a graph that looks like this. Look at how clean the line is. Look at how obvious the trend in the data is. It's going to make it really easy for someone who's viewing your work to be able to then go ahead and really understand what you're getting at. When you want to modify it, because it's good, but it's not perfect, you click anywhere in the chart. You then come up here to the 3 dots, and you're going to say Edit Chart. The first thing that we want to do is, this title does not show the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. So we're going to go to Customize, chart and access titles. We're going to select the chart title, and then we're going to go ahead and type in a good title. My good title is going to be something like this. The effect of different amounts of fertilizer on the height of a tomato plant. Notice it shows my independent and my dependent variable, and it lets the viewer know exactly what they're about to learn. This fertilizer down here is great. It has the correct variable as well as correct units. Up the side though, averages isn't really what we're showing here. Yes, we're showing averages, but averages of what? So we're going to come in here to chart title, and we're going to ask it to change a different chart title. We're going to choose the vertical axis. We're then going to delete that, and we're going to type in what it actually is. And this is going to be the height of the plant. Now notice, height of the plant is good, but height of the plant with units, which is centimeters, is even better. So now you can see how both my horizontal and my vertical axes match. Independent on the correct axis, dependent on the correct axis, both of them with units. So now we're finished with this particular setting. One of the other things is that maybe your viewer would really like to know what data points you actually collected. To do that, we're going to go in here to series. And when we go in here to series, we're going to come down and we're going to say, okay, we don't want our point size to be none or the size of the line. We want the point size to be a little bit bigger. And then if you'd like to get creative, you could come in here and you could change the type of mark that the actual point is. Doesn't really matter. Any of them work just as well as any other. Just depends on what you think makes it easiest for your reader or your viewer to look at your data. So at this point, we have a really well formatted data table. If you'd like, you can also end up coming in here and you can do a thing called adding the minor grid lines. Why would we maybe want to do this? We do this because it helps the viewer to be able to better analyze, since these are pretty big jumps. Oh, look, it really is 1 and then 1.5 and 2. This way, if they don't want to go back up and look at the actual data table, or if unfortunately the data table were not presented, they would then be able to know really exactly what the value of that dot is because of the minor grid lines that have been added. After you've done everything, your graph should look something like this. You can see that I actually even went in and added an additional level of grid lines there because it felt to me as though I'd like to have every single one of the data points represented on the bottom. That's represented in my independent variable on the top. I hope that this has helped you to be able to make graphs better, and it will help you to feel more confident when you're doing labs in science class.